So, a couple weeks later, I show up to the lot and they give me a terrible haircut and I'm not allowed to put any product in it. And they strip my leather jacket away from me and they put me in some ill-fitting clothes, one shirt that has now become a piece of film iconography. And I was Sean Crenshaw.
What the fuck is up, Halloween?
Stop it. Everybody knows I'm a motherfucking monster. Squad.
Monster Squad. With the Monster Squad.
Hey.
That's what we're covering today, folks. Part of our Halloween extravaganza, October super duper scary series.
Yeah, so come hang out with us. See what I did there, Dracula. And where would you want to be other than here with us here at TTFT?
Don't be a faggot.
Oh, I see what you did there. 80s. Don't be a foon or a creature of the lagoon. We're missing anybody there? Be Frank or be Stein.
1987's Monster Squad. I grew up on this movie. I believe this was your first time watching it today, right?
No, I've seen it before.
You've seen it before?
What reminded me was when Frankenstein and the little girl were playing dress up. I was like, oh, that's when I know. I haven't seen it in probably 25 years, but I know I saw it. I've seen it.
Well, we'll get into. Well, I watch the movie routinely. I'm interested to see how it held up in his eyes. Somebody that's not seen it in a few decades.
True.
Before we get into all that, real quick, just a little bit of information about the Monster Squad. It was directed by Fred Dekker. Fred Dekker also wrote this with Shane Black. And Fred Dekker and Shane Black have worked together quite often, writing together. Shane Black is responsible for a lot of awesome movies, including all of the Lethal Weapons, Last Boy Scout, Last Action Hero, Long Kiss Goodnight, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang,
Iron Man 3,
which he directed, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, which he also directed, The Predator, which he also directed, and The Nice Guys, which he also directed.
Predators.
And I just had there was one notable factoid about this movie that I thought was worth mentioning. It's if you notice that in the movie, it's a resemblance of all of the famous Universal monsters from back in the day. But because Universal owns those, the likeness, the names, and all that stuff, they had to be real slick with it and make subtle changes so that when you look at the monsters in Monster Squad, you feel like you're looking at Frankenstein, Wolfman, the Mummy, Dracula.
Although they do say Dracula in this.
Yes, they do, because that's technically a name that was pre-established before Universal. But Universal, like, they had to call Creature from the Black Lagoon, they had to call him Gillman. Like little weird things that they had to do to resemble the monsters without getting sued. And so I thought that was pretty interesting. But fuck, we're back in the 80s, back before political correctness took over. We're 3 minutes in the movie. We got like 3 faggots already spouted.
Did you say faggot? What'd you say?
Yeah, again, to me, it reminds you of a time of just welcome back to the 80s. You got the F word, the other F word, fat kid.
Hi, I'm Derek, and I'm in the street where fat kid is blocking traffic. Fat kid, can't you stop eating?
That was the other F word they dropped. Got the little girl saying shit.
Don't be chicken shit.
Like it was like I felt like I was home again, man. I'm not gonna lie. I really did. One of the things that we talked about, like, again, that makes you know you're right back into the 80s. Let's just go ahead and talk about it. That film closely resembles so many films from the 80s. And you got your E.T. elements, you have your Goonies elements, you probably some other stuff too. Like, you can just tell it was inspired by a lot of things. But I don't think that takes away from it.
No, it somehow feels like it's its own thing, because like, even though it did get a lot of heat for like being a Goonies ripoff, I never saw it as a Goonies ripoff. I grew up loving both the Goonies and Monster Squad, and I never really compared the two. But I mean, looking at it as an adult, you can see how it could kind of be perceived as like a cash grab.
Between Sean and Mikey's performance, man, I just told you, man, that thing was crazy, man. Like, what are you doing here, man? He's just missing the inhaler.
Yeah, they were very, and then there was that you got Frank with Monster Squad, who is like Sloth, and then his relationship with Phoebe was a lot like Chunk and Sloth. Like, there's a lot of
that's what I'm saying, the relationship between the alien and the little girl in E.T.
Yeah,
that's what I was saying too. Yeah,
but it somehow still feels fresh because I think Shane Black's writing is what sets it apart from movies that it's compared to, because the writing is so witty and it doesn't it's for kids, but adults can watch it and still appreciate the humor because the writing is just so like one of the first lines when Horace, fat kid, he says, "My name's Horace," and then EJ's friend, the bully, he's like, "Horace." Like there's little things like that. Like you would never see that in a film that's made for kids now, or a kids.
That was called ranking or belittling or punching
Horror.
down on. And I just love the fact that, dude, I told you one of the things that made me really love it when it first came on, or took me back to that era. You got fucking the Fawn showing up, and Charlie Sheen. The first thing you see is his bike. You see his shoe. He flips a little match off his shoe.
The cuffed jeans.
Yeah, everything else, and then he proceeds to tell the big brother from the Wonder Years,
Dropped your candy bar.
You dropped your candy bar, EJ.
It's his.
It's yours now.
He don't even argue with him. Hey man,
Eat it.
Eat it, and we'll call it a day.
Yeah, we'll call it a day.
Hey,
Rudy, I'm not gonna sit
Eat
here
up.
and eat-
And we'll call it a day.
Not gonna lie, when I was growing up, I loved Andre Gower's character, but Ruby was just so badass.
right?
Like,
That's
oh,
why
man.
Andre Gower said he wanted to be him. Everybody read that script and was like, "Oh yeah, man, I'm gonna be the one lighting the match. I'm gonna be making the bullets." Speaking of that, damn one thing you'd have thought in the good old USA they would have never took wood shop out of schools or workshop or mechanic shop. He was in there making bullets next to a pack of cigarettes.
That
It
was not a flown today in one single bit.
flown. It wouldn't even get off the ground. Are you
Yeah.
kidding me? So many things, the language, what they were doing. But one thing it did remind me of was that era. We joked about how you don't really see any neighbors or parents, a lot of parents in the film, and that's done for one reason. But it also reminded you, back in those days, kids were allowed to go outside and just go on adventures all the time, and that was normal.
Yeah, I never hung out with my parents at that age growing up. It was
Just go do something. Get out of my face.
Yeah. Why are you here?
Right.
You're here? You want chores to do?
Right, yeah, I'm gone. Just be
Yeah.
back. Be back later.
Yeah. When the sun goes, when the street lights come on, get back home.
Side note, I would like for Peter to investigate the handling of that dog on set. That dog came out of that tree like for one time. Other than that, that dog's been in that tree for that entire time.
How does that dog get up here anyway?
There was one. I never realized this until watching it today, that there's one single black person in the film.
I thought you'd never ask.
And I bring him up, Stan Shaw, Detective Sapir. I bring him up because he has one of my favorite quotes. But kudos to the filmmakers for making the one black filmmaker a police officer. That was progressive for the 80s, not making him like a drug dealer or something like that. But then also take those kudos back because a single person dies in this film, and it's the black guy. Which is like,
and it's Dracula that did it too.
it's the horror movie trope. Like, if the black guy never survives, and I think there's literally one death in this film, and it's the one single black guy.
Somehow they managed to find him.
His quote though, he is so good in it. Like his character was strictly that was the adult humor in it. Like
he was really good. I would definitely give his character good.
When they're talking to the guard and the mummy went missing, and he's asking about like. He's just half-assedly going about. He's like, "Did you take him?" I was like, "No." He's like, "Worth a shot."
Did you take him? No, sir. Just a shot.
Well, too hard. Can't crack it. Let's go be firemen.
Boom. And that was a hell of a line. I like that. Also, like I said, when you talk about lines in the film, there were so many subtleties in the film. And one of the things that I brought up, like the subliminal messages they drop. The first one, they go meet the principal when they get in trouble for drawing stuff, and he was like, "Guys, see, science is cool, and but it's why I love it, because it's real and monsters aren't."
I dig it, man.
And the next thing you know, and then like they cut to the next scene, they're leaving. He was like, "Man, he's rubbing all on my shoulder and everything." I'm like, "Okay, there's one monster."
I was a kid once. I thought monsters were cool.
And then later on, they cut to when the German guy. Yeah.
I mean, you go ahead and say what you're going to say, but I'm going to push back, because that German guy holds a special place in my heart.
Yeah. Well, that means him and Phoebe does, because he was so close to her. Don't get me started on him.
Perhaps we should all go back to my place for some pie.
Yeah, no, I'm
surprised he didn't get sucked up into that
Don't
vortex.
ruin him for me. He was such a sweetheart. He was there for the kids when nobody else was.
He was Mr. Rooney.
He invited them into his house. He was going to give them. He just wanted to give them pie. He wanted them to be okay. That old German.
Are you a
man was-
sympathizer?
I don't. He risked his life for them.
First off, there must have been no such thing as HOA fees back then. The grass was all over his windows and everything, and how he closed that door. Like they're in the middle of a high-speed chase, monsters are everywhere. And he's like, "Let's go back to my house and have pie."
Let's just go back for pie. Yeah. that I never picked up on that until watching it recently.
Also, I have a case.
You
It's questionable at best.
You could definitely make a case. Yes, it would hold up on a Reddit thread. Like, all right,
It's
look,
very
see
questionable.
Here, when he got so excited, they're like when the teenage girl, the sister was not a virgin, so the younger sister Phoebe, like, are you a virgin?
Yes.
She? A virgin? Yes, a virgin!
Yes, she
almost
is.
like he was trying to will her virginity back into her.
Yes, she was nuts over my house the other night.
Yeah. Anyway, the monster in the closet scene, that's classic.
Ooh, look at that big, scary monster. Ooh.
Oh, no,
That's
that's very
great.
class. I
Hey,
like
bro,
that.
The beats, the pacing, the way the reveal.
Oh, that was good.
That was such like an iconic, like instantly classic scene.
My thing, I'm gonna tell you, who I was really disappointed in. I don't care how long it's been. I was really disappointed in Dracula, but for what he did from the onslaught of the film. No, not his performance. No, because Frankenstein's dumb. You sent him over there with that long ass mission. Whoever would have found him, he would have made a friend out of.
Yeah.
He's been gone. He didn't know what the fuck's going on. Like you sent him out there with this is the most important mission you sent him on.
Master wants children dead.
Yeah,
It's bad planning. It reminds me of old Anthony from fucking Dead Presidents.
That Dracula though, his name, the guy that plays him is Duncan Rieger. And according to Wizard Magazine, he was voted above all other Draculas and is still regarded today as one of the best performances.
Oh no, it was a
of
very good
Dracula.
performance. I had no problem with his performance as Dracula, from the scathing of the teeth and everything. And let that be a lesson to all you people out there, filmmakers and everything. We talked about the graphics really did hold up for it. When did this come out? 80 what?
87.
Yeah, it held up.
Because they went practical always holds up.
Yeah.
And that, like CGI has like a shelf life of maybe 5 years.
Because once it changes, it's going back as like an eyesore with everything else,
Yeah.
man. Except Jurassic Park. Somehow that still looks good.
Because they mixed it with practical.
Yeah.
And because Steven Spielberg is just a master. of his
That's a
craft.
guy from ILM. You saw the documentary.
Speaking of Frankenstein's monster, one of the best scenes and quotes in the whole movie is bogus. He's trying to take the picture of the sister next door in the bra, and it snaps the camera, and just the timing of when he said, and then the callback to it later on.
No, he didn't say bogus.
Yeah,
No, he didn't.
yeah, he did.
He said boobies,
No,
boobs.
no.
No, yeah, he didn't say no.
Bogus.
Case by case.
It's 80s, man.
Okay.
They're
Oh
throwing
yeah,
80s
you know what made me think about that?
catchphrases
Wasn't
at
even
him.
that one word. Another word. No, go for your payoff first, because it was a payoff.
Well, yeah, when he showdowns with Dracula at the end, he does one more callback.
Bogus.
Frankenstein's monster is like has always been one of the highlights in the movie for me, especially his relationship with
The little girl.
Phoebe. And yeah, and they did such a good job at respecting the lore of Frankenstein's monster. How he was always the misunderstood monster that really just wanted to be accepted.
And remember because they showed his monster face when
When
we looked
he
at his
held-
face. Yeah.
It's so stupid how that scene, I catch myself feeling emotions for Frankenstein's monster. But yeah, when he's holding that mask of himself and he punches it down, and then he tries to take his own face off, and he goes, "Scary."
Scary.
And why is it that she's on the screen with the literal monster in Frankenstein, and they had, like you say, they share this special relationship? I didn't feel anything, one red flag with that. Every time she's with that other guy, things are questionable, is what I'm saying. You're laughing, but I mean, hey, you wouldn't see these things as a child, but as an adult,
Yeah.
you would. It's creepy to say the least, man. I'll be on Reddit later.
Mary Ellen Trainor, rest in peace, is a terrible mother.
No, that's just the take. It's nothing else.
It seems like every time that she's tasked with taking care of kids, they're never supervised. They're always getting into some legitimately dangerous, could kill you type of shit. And then she just pops back out at the end like, oh, so glad you guys are safe. No thanks to you.
She's a bad mom. Rest in peace.
Yeah, rest in peace. I don't really.
Now it's standing parenthood.
I do want to. Who would you say your scene stealer is in this?
I mean, for the kids or for the adults, because Dracula, for me, is like I said, his acting was really good. He was really there on the chops. But I'll just go with the kids, man. I got to give it to. He's gonna be mad, but I got to give it to.
Eat.
I would. Yeah, I mean, he was always cool to me, but I have to give an honorable mention to Andre Gower because he carries the movie. He's like the anchor that everything threads through, and he's like the perfect leading kid. Like he's not too much, so you're not tired of him. He's not overacting. He killed it. But if I have to give a scene stealer to somebody, it would be Ashley Bank, Phoebe.
That's discrimination, jerkoid.
Oh man! Oh
just
yeah,
because
she went hard.
for her age, how she,
you know what,
she was so convincing. And
you changed my mind. And give it back. Yeah, I do agree.
And the chemistry between her and Frank, that's like an all-time like sweet story. So yeah, she's my scene stealer. Liam Neeson was actually paid for a bit part, but he never even shot it.
I thought I saw him in there for some reason.
You didn't. He got paid. Maybe they just threw a.
What was he supposed to be?
I don't even know. And then rest in peace to Brent Challam, who played Horace. He passed away from pneumonia in 1997.
That sucks.
Also want to give an honorable mention to Robbie Kiger, Patrick, Sean, Andre Gower's best friend, the one that's cracking his back.
I can't believe it.
When his sister is like, it was with so-and-so, it doesn't count. It does count.
No, what do you mean no? Well, Steve, but he doesn't count. Doesn't count.
He was, he's like a very, I'm surprised I looked him up. I didn't really see him in much else, but he's such a natural in this. Like, he looks like he's not even trying. He's just.
It was real good. He was real good.
Miss Carlson's a nice teacher and all, but she's boring and has an odd-shaped head. That's why Sean and the guys call her Meow Mix, because her head's shaped like a cat head.
Seth Green, which I think Andre Gower brought this up in the interview. Seth Green auditioned but didn't get the role, but him and Andre Gower became friends and are still friends to this day. Actually, speaking of Andre Gower, check this shit out right now. We talked to him for a little bit. Okay, the moment that I've been personally waiting for, 1987, you're Sean, the leader of the group of the outcast war fanatic kids, the Monster Squad. This movie undoubtedly left its mark on countless kids, including myself, who grew up in the 80s and has gone on to become a beloved cult classic. Before we get into it, what was the audition process like for that? And how did you feel when you got the news that you're going to be the lead in this big film?
Well, that's the fun story about this casting process for Monster Squad. I kind of mentioned a couple of the things that I had done just previous, the year, 2, 3, 4 years before Monster Squad. And I sort of had a look, I sort of had a type, which actors do. That's a thing. I always had I had fantastic hair. So you can see where's it? This.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'll pop that up on as an overlay. Yeah.
Don't pop this one. That's terrible. That's great.
Lava, scuba, dive, dig it.
I always had great hair, a lot of hair product. I kept Sebastian and Paul Mitchell and a lot of stuff in business for years. And always wore, kind of, maybe there's a leather jacket in there a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually never auditioned once for the role of Sean.
Wow.
I actually originally got called in and then screen tested and met with producers and the directors and the writers, all as Rudy. And because that was sort of the look and the thing and the type, could I have played Rudy? Sure. It would have been a different Rudy than we see now, but I know exactly why I'm not Rudy.
Mm-hmm.
I know it because we've talked about it, and heard it a million times over the last, 15 years or so, Ryan Lambert went in there and absolutely murdered his auditions for Rudy and became Rudy in the room and left no other choice.
Okay, you guys. We should let him in on one condition.
Same thing like Duncan did for Dracula, kind of an unknown actor, reading against other actors that were known, and he became Dracula in the room.
Mm-hmm.
I will have your son.
But what's really interesting that I didn't really I always knew I didn't read for Sean, and then I ended up getting Sean. And a few weeks later they call and say, ding, ding, hey, that movie you read for a couple weeks ago, they cast you in it. Congratulations. This is your agent speaking. And, you start production in, a month or something. And you're like, oh, okay, which movie? Because you're reading. Yeah. Look, at this time, like we're all auditioning for like 2, 3, 4 things, a day, or at least a week. I was like, oh, that monster movie. I was like, oh, but wait, they're like, but you didn't get the role you read for. And that's usually bad news. Like, look, statistically, normally it's like, hey, they liked you, but they went with someone else for the role, but they gave you a different role. And that's usually a lesser role. Yeah. And I had read the script and I realized that there was only 2 other roles. I was like, wait, I'm not in. I was like, oh, a lesser role. That's lesser than one of the bullies. Am I one of the bullies?
Rudy, I'm not going to eat up.
Or, eat it. Boy, is it Patrick? Like, it was like, I don't want to do that. And then I got, I was a little miffed. And they were like, no. You got cast as the lead. They just straight cast you as the lead.
We're the Monster Squad.
And I went, damn it. No, Rudy's the cool character. And so I was a little let down.
The first actor never wanted to be a lead.
I swear it was. I swear it was. Nothing. And they're like, no. This is the lead. This is a good thing. And I was like, no. Rudy kills more monsters. He gets the girl. He's the cool kid. And so, a couple weeks later, I show up to the lot and they give me a terrible haircut and I'm not allowed to put any product in it. And they stripped my leather jacket away from me and they put me in some ill-fitting clothes, one shirt that has now become a piece of film iconography. And I was Sean Crenshaw.
Wolfthorpe.
Rudy may be the cool kid, but Sean Crenshaw, if kids were being honest with themselves, Rudy may have been the kid they wanted to be, but Sean was the kid they were. Most kids.
We get that a lot, yes. And even more so, very interestingly enough, which is something that we really understood leading into the production of the documentary, but then more so while we were making it and actually talking to people about it. A lot of people were Horace in their group too.
Yeah.
I can see that happening. Let me ask you this. Do you remember what the first day on set was like? And is there a scene from the actual film itself that holds a special place in your heart?
I think the first day on set, we were at the school and I think it was in the principal's office. I think that was I think I was there the day before or the 2 days before when Ryan actually pulls up on the bike and does the lighting, the thing, eat up and we'll call it a day, iconic scene. So I watched that and then I worked the next day with Robbie and the principal and then had the scene in the hallway. So I think that was my first day in front of the camera on Monster Squad, which interestingly enough, that group of kids, there's a scene in the hallway that got cut where a kid runs up and trades trades I think it's garbage field kids cards or something with Sean and does a quick little exchange and then bolts off. And it was a very young Dustin. It was a very young Dustin Diamond. And so that was cool. And
Double D.
Rest in peace.
Yeah. And what's very interesting is someone had forwarded an audio recording or a quote for his dad actually mentioned that day and mentioned, how nice it was to work on that set and mentioned me personally that Dustin would always remember that fondly. And I was like, well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, Monster Squad was 3.5 months straight of long hours, a lot of work, a lot of stuff going on. You ask about, a particular scene. I got to see, a lot of the stuff, even that I wasn't in get made, which was cool. I love the scene with Sean and Dell in the bathroom because I think it's a cool father-son thing that ends up later on the roof, which everybody loves. They think it's just the coolest thing in the world. And that's a great scene. I think, you realize that years later. But look, if you're going to ask about a particular scene or sequence, it's that final kind of, action battle sequence at the end with the wind and the vortexes. That was absolute bonkers for that, 10 days we were on that lot at Warner Brothers and had big big airplane propeller engines throwing leaves and sticks at us and, flying around on rigging and doing some stunt work, ironically. And there's actually I was actually up on a rigging getting sucked into the vortex that didn't make it into the scene, but I made sure we got that BTS shot in the documentary because no one ever saw my rig work on that, my rigging work on that. And so that was a little selfish put in the documentary, but
it's okay. We're all actors. It's okay.
Yeah. And, but yeah, so I would say if there's a particular scene, it's got to be that last sequence. But, you look at that movie, you see it, bazillion times. And, each year you kind of look at it with a different lens or you start focusing on something else. And I think it's interesting to be a part of something like that has lasted so long that people still give a rip about.
Yeah. Was Ryan Lambert really smoking in that? Because I know it was the 80s.
I'll have to check with Ryan if I'm allowed to divulge.
Yes.
But yeah, he actually, he's 14 years old. You're not allowed to give a kid actual cigarettes. They were like clove cigarettes, but actually if you ask Ryan, they were swapped out and they were real, I think.
There we go.
You hear about Drew Barrymore. No, not, going all the way back to Judy Garland, like here, we need your high energy. Smoke these kids.
Smoke these kids.
What a hell of a time. What was Shane? I know Shane Black just wrote it, but I wasn't sure if you. I know that you probably had some interaction with him doing the documentary, but what was him and Frank Decker like to work with?
Look, Shane and Fred were great, and Shane was there for the whole production, because they were always kind of rewriting pages or working on stuff, and Fred had to pull double duty, so he's co-writer and directing this feature. Which was a daunting task and had its ups and downs in the first, couple of weeks of production for him and all of us. But it was what was great about Fred and Shane is they were like 10 years older than we were. Like they were still like they just got out of being kids. Like they just went into that next phase of not being a kid themselves. And I think that lent to a lot of what clicked with all of us and working with them. Yeah. And I remember, Shane, Shane's a very, he's a very smart guy. He reads a lot. He's an actor. He's a performer. And, he came to LA to be an actor and then ended up being, one of the highest paid screenwriters in the history of Hollywood. That's not a bad ending. Yeah. And he still acts all the time. It's great. But Fred was a little more, obviously, because he had to be, interfacing and, kind of in the middle, as the director all the time. Shane was, always there, always present and around, but not as vocal or active as Fred would have to be as the actual director. But, I always knew I liked these guys and because they were energetic, they were cool, they were knowledgeable about the, the geeky stuff that they really knew about. And, they read a ton of books and watched a ton of movies and knew a bunch of, old stuff. And I knew a little of that and I appreciated that. And I thought that helped. What ended up becoming one of the main things that, makes Monster Squad as a story and a movie connect with, the fans and the people that watch it is the heart and the authenticity of the characters and the dialogue and the substance and the scenarios. And how we act with each other in the situations and how we, kind of get through the day. And I don't think that genuine kind of kid energy, kid interaction would have happened if you had like two, 46-year-old writers that were trying to be, what are all the kids saying today? Like, are they, are they doing that rap thing? Let's put some rap in here, which they did at Monster Squad at the end, of course. We need silver bullets. We need wooden sticks. But, because Michael Cimbello, the big hip hop, street cred. And, and I think that was the key. They tapped into something that whether they intended to or not, just because of the natural kind of osmosis of having two young, energetic, just graduated from being kids themselves, guys with Fred and Shane. And then that, kind of transferred into us and we brought, we were able to kind of like bring out what they wanted. And whether they intentionally did it or not, that's one of the key things that connected with the kids that saw the movie and got attached to it forever and to this day. because it's kind of authentic and it's real, and everybody connected with that.
Yeah, it's crazy watching it. Like, of course, I loved it as a kid, but then like going back and showing my wife as an adult, and a lot of the times when you remember something as a kid, it's through rose tinted glasses, and then you show it to somebody as an adult, and like 10 minutes into it, you're like, oh shit, I should have left this in the memories. But Monster Squad, like, I appreciated it so much more as an adult because I had gone on to really appreciate all of Shane Black's work and the wit and how quick he is in the writing, especially like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Oh, that's my favorite thing.
Totally underrated film. But then to go back and watch Monster Squad after seeing all those, like he that same wit and the quick, like, yeah, and you usually don't get that in family films. Like you usually have to, if you're doing a family film, you're like, it's like there's not much room for wit or sarcasm or a cleverness. It kind of all goes out the window for the sake of like, oh, we don't want to make sure the kids get it. But he was really good at doing something that the whole family could watch and laugh at.
Ooh, look at that big scary monster. Ooh.
Yes, and there's some, I think original drafts of the script, were obviously longer and had jokes and language that, a lot of people, worry about the language that's in Monster Squad. There was a lot more in it that didn't make it on screen. A lot more situations, but yeah, you hit it right on the head. It's if you know a Shane Black movie, you realize that this is a Shane Black movie, and a lot of people have to go in reverse.
Yeah,
they don't know it from it, but if you go back and watch all the other stuff, and what's really fun, when I realized that because we were shooting Monster Squad, and Shane sold his his first solo spec script, and it was this thing that this little movie called Lethal Weapon, and that I think did okay. Yeah. And so we celebrated that. And when you watch Lethal Weapon, and Riggs and Murtaugh is just really Stan Shaw and Stephen Bach to Monster Squad.
You want to ask me about the hood ornament? What about the hood ornament? I thought you'd never ask.
Just kind of reversed in kind of the skin tone palette, but it's they're the same. It's this 2-person dialogue, this witty banter, like I said, it's back and forth. Even the kids have it. And there was a lot more of it in the original drafts of the script, that in some scenes that we even shot that got cut. But yeah, that's definitely an indelible mark that Shane leaves on his pages.
Well, that's the other thing about Monster Squad that makes it so much better than other family films or films that are like centered around kids that are tasked with like carrying the whole thing, is that like usually you have to kind of like give kids a little bit of grace. It's like, all right, they're doing their best. My suspension of disbelief, I'm gonna, keep it where it needs to be, meet them halfway. But with Monster Squad, it was like you guys carried your own, like you guys carried the film and this like witty dialogue, and there was never a moment where it's like, you guys were just great in it, and the chemistry was so on point. Like I guess from the writing to the casting to the performances, it was just all done such a high quality that you're not accustomed to seeing in family films.
Yeah, and sometimes it seems forced, and I don't think there's a lot that seems forced. No. With us as a cast in Monster Squad, which is awesome and which is rare. Yeah. Even with Ashley, being 5 years old and being Phoebe, she just kind of folded right in with the group and just became this kind of standout thing. And that's another thing that's interesting about Monster Squad is it was written in 80, 85, 86, shot in, comes out in 87. And the hero of the movie is the 5-year-old girl. Mm-hmm. That's also a very Shane Black thing. If you watch a lot of Shane Black's movie, it's the young girl that's the ultimate hero. And I think that's pretty rad. But I think we all just kind of clicked. The only other cast member I had known was Robbie. Growing up with Robbie. Brent was actually younger than most of us, and Ryan was a little older. I met Ryan I think 3 weeks before we started shooting, because he was fairly new. Like he had just joined Kids Incorporated, and which I knew that whole cast, and then he was like the new kid, but hadn't really seen the show with him in it yet. And we met at a party. He was like, "Oh, I think we're doing a movie next month together." We're like, "Yeah," and we're like, "Cool." And we're like, you want to be friends?
Go
like,
for it.
Okay. And he showed up, and he was just as cool gets. And I tried, I tried to be insufferable know-it-all, kind of kid bossing everybody around. But that's very natural for me to do.
God damn it, would you shut up? Did you hear a word I said?
But I think it just worked. I don't want to, I'm not bad mouthing other movies or, dragging anybody else, but I think it has to do with that heart and authenticity that Fred, words on the page and then kind of relationship and direction that we did all just kind of worked. And, it's because they weren't 45-year-old dudes trying to make something funny for 13-year-olds.
Yeah.
Which never works.
Ever.
Yeah.
Because they're like, oh, what's funny today? Let's go. They don't even have any reference. They'll just think it's funny. And they're like, well, do kids still say gee willikers?
Yeah.
Like, no, Beaver, they don't.
Where's that reefer?
I want to jump ahead just a little bit. We're going to come right back to Monster Squad, but this is semi-related. In 2018, you were in a short film called What Lives Under the Bed, and your character's name is Mr. Decker, and we couldn't help but assume that's a shout out to Fred. Is that assumption correct?
Yes. So, I don't think there's no issues talking about that. What Lives Under the Bed is actually a USC Stark program graduate student film.
Okay.
That a really cool dude named Joey Daniel, who is a film student at USC and then got in the Stark program, and this was his thesis project. And he's a huge Monster Squad fan. And every movie that he made in film school was directly kind of homaged or, there's direct lifts or, kind of made his own Monster Squad at film school. And I can't remember where we met. Like, he either contacted me, we met somewhere at an event and Screen Pals. And he asked me if I would be in his graduate thesis film. And I was like, yeah, of course I will.
That had to blow his mind.
It did. It's Joey's a really cool dude, and we're still pals. Like, we still connect and text every once in a while. And the film came out really good. It was much better. I went to like the showcase of all these kind of USC graduate students. Like, this is the graduate program of USC Film School, and by far the best short had nothing to do with me. But yes, it was the first time I ever played the father of somebody, because the kid is the lead. I'm only in like 2 shots. And, it was a really cute concept. I thought it was funny. There was puppet work and like creature effects work in it. And, it's about a kid, in his, there's a storm and like the power goes out and his dad works for the power company. So he's got to leave. So he's got to leave his kid there. And obviously there's like a divorced parent situation. So he has to leave him there by himself and he's not supposed to. And he goes off to, fix the power company. And this kid is, afraid of being in his room. And, the dad's things like, look, there's nothing under the bed. There's no monster under the bed. And there's no monster that lives in your closet. So just, grow up and I'll be back in a couple hours. And of course, there's a monster in the closet. There's a monster up in the bed. And, this kid has to, it's very good. And there's a cool twist. There's a twist with the, monster under the bed movie as a student project. It's great. Awesome. It's super rich. It's shot well. Like I said, it's puppet and creature effects work and makeup. And, I just play kind of like the dad that has to come in and out. But yeah, that's Mr. Decker is a direct reference to Fred, to, kind of homage Fred for making Joey's favorite movie called Monster Squad.
Do you know if that's available anywhere online for people to check out?
I wish it was, because I was, we were trying to showcase it in a couple places. I created a show called Short Ends that got bought by Nerdist, and we had it on Legendary, like the Nerdist kind of pay channel. We did 22 episodes, and we showcased short films and celebrated short filmmakers. Not, they can be tall, but like the filmmakers that make short films.
Yes.
And I really wanted that on that, kind of give Joey some credit and show his film some love. And what happens at USC when you make a student film, you don't own that, and you can't do anything with it.
Okay.
He couldn't take it out in festival, and he couldn't show it to anybody. He can't put it on Vimeo with a link. And so it just sits at USC and does nothing. And I thought that was a crime. And not just for him, but for anybody. Someone make a really rad student film and no one can see it.
We're going to
So
go on
that was unfortunate.
change.org tonight
That's
and
right.
get a petition going.
Okay, let the films go.
This won't be the first petition we've made. We haven't had one that's successful yet, but damn
Keep
it, we're
going.
putting them out there.
That's right. So I even wanted to, be able to interview Joey for the documentary and then, show some of that and show some of his other stuff as lifts. And it just didn't work out.
Yeah. Oh, that was awesome of you to do that. And I can only imagine just the excitement, somebody that grew up on Monster Squad to now be like working with you directly in a film that he wrote. That just had to that's something that I guarantee he will probably never ever forget.
I hope not, because he's a cool dude and we're still pals. It's not the first time, that's not the first time someone reached out and said, hey, I've got a project and, is it something to be interested in? A lot of times there's something you can't do or shouldn't do, or it does never happen. But I've done it a handful of times and, look, why wouldn't you? I mean, it's, who gets to be in that situation? Very few people on this planet. And I'm certainly going to enjoy it.
That's cool. All right, coming back to Monster Squad, this earned you a Saturn Award for Best Performance by a Younger Actor, as well as a Young Artist Award for Outstanding Young Actors Ensemble, along with your other castmates. So you're just a teenager at this time. What was it like receiving acclaim for your work and the lead of a film at such a young age?
It's great. Anytime you get accolades or attention or anything. And, back then I was very fortunate, teenage, kid working a lot of television, movies, you get a lot of attention. And this is way before the internet. And, so sort of the social media of the time were teen magazines. Mm-hmm. So, you're in there and you go to parties and, it's funky, but it's a room full of screaming girls and people, losing their minds because, you or Ryan Lambert or, someone walks in a room and that was a fun time. It's different now. I like it back then. To win an award is great. Everybody wants to win an award. What's interesting about kids, the Saturn Awards was totally different because it was kind of like an offshoot. It was kind of like a weird thing. It was sort of like, oh, it's those weird kind of the goth kids, some goth kid, made an award show.
Yeah.
But, kids and stuff never really got a lot of recognition very much, especially from the big award shows or the big media, stuff like that. Yes, are there exceptions? Tatum O'Neal, things like that. There was a kid, getting Oscar nods and stuff. Anna Paquin winning, it's, in the 90s. That's very, very cool. We grew up with a thing, not only the Saturn Awards, but that was neat to win, of course, and went to the event and it was awesome. But, we had a thing called the Youth and Film Awards, which was started by a lady and a group of people that was really the award show geared towards the kids. And it was only about kids. There was nobody else. And it was, so peers got to vote for and with their kids. And they had an event every year. And you could show up and, be a presenter or an MC. And sometimes you were nominated and sometimes you won awards. So, that added to it as well. It didn't really have the gravitas or the cachet as, like the Emmys, but it was certainly something nice to be recognized. And look, we all like accolades and recognition, of course. Yeah. The Saturn Awards was kind of cool because that was different. The other thing I remember going, the guy that ran it too, it was exactly who you would think runs this thing called the Count Dracula Society. And, and we got I got a special induction into the society as a member and, got like a plaque and a certificate and a pint of blood. And a pint of blood. So, it's neat to be associated with something that, people recognize. And then the movie comes, of course the movie comes out and it's an absolute bomb and no one cares about it.
Happens, man.
Yeah, that's I always forget about that in hindsight. That because I was born in 83, so I saw it on VHS somewhere around 88, 89. And it was before the internet. So you go into a movie just completely blind. You don't know what the world thinks about it. You just literally have your own experience to judge it by. So so to go after loving it your whole life, then the internet comes around and So like, yeah, well, these were the box office numbers, idiot.
Right. Yeah.
I missed that time where, like you say, your input from the outside world did determine on how you felt about something. There was no Reddits, there was no Rotten Tomatoes. It was like, use your brain, tell me what you think. Now I'm sure there are so many, but can you narrow down one particular memory that stayed with you through the production, whether it's in front of the screen or behind it, doesn't matter?
Yeah, I think, it was, because when you're a kid on set, you can only be there for a couple hours a day. You have to go to school every day, and it's very regimented. And we had kids of different ages, and all those numbers are all different. Luckily, I was the one, me and Ryan were the oldest, and we could stay longer. But once you signed out, you were supposed to go home and not be there. But a couple of times I stayed around and watched them make the rest of the movie. And I'm really glad I did, because you're tired and you got to show up the next morning and start working and do another day. And we stayed up late and stayed on the lot and watched Wolfman blow up in midair. I got to see that practical, so that was kind of cool.
Amazing.
That I was always, I wouldn't say confused, but John Grise was. I know he's credited as the desperate man in the police station, but I always thought that he was the Wolfman, and that's not the case, is it?
That's not the case. He's the actor that does the transition. He gets shot. He's the desperate man, crazy guy that's been bit. No one believes him. They shoot him. He gets out. He turns into the werewolf in the phone booth, which is probably one of the better werewolf transformations that's been put on film, according to a lot of people, and my opinion.
But you just
but once the full transition, there was actually a performer named Carl Tybalt, and because he was a little bit taller, and he'd had. That's what he got cast to do, because you're not showing your face and you're not saying lines, and he was hired to be in the suit, which is very, very difficult to do.
Yeah, that's Jean-Claude Van Damme in Predator. That's why he quit. Suit's too high and everything's going on.
I don't know if that's why he quit. I don't think he quit.
That's what he said. That's what John said. John, he said, man, the suit. I mean, that's what he said, but we don't know if that's the reason. He knows the real story.
The red chicken suit. They shut that movie down.
It's documented.
The red chicken suit. They shot in the wrong location for a month. Jean-Claude Van Damme was running around in a red rubber chicken alien suit and doing backflips and splits. It didn't look like the jungle, and the studio actually shut. Apparently, this is this we can document it elsewhere. Shut their production down, and here's the tie-in, which is very cool. Is Schwarzenegger? I believe had just worked with Stan Winston and their crew on Terminator. And all those kids, and they were kids because they were like 20, worked on Monster Squad.
Get out of here.
And this is all the same year, so it's all the same creature effects guys.
And Shane Black going
when
on
they
Predator.
Well, he did the Predator.
When they shut down the production, they brought in Shane as a script doctor. And he changed, a bulk of the script. And one of the deals, I think, if I'm telling the story right, Shane was like, "Well, I'm writing myself in the movie," because he's an actor. He's a very very smart deal maker on that one. And they're like, "Yeah, that's great." I think it was something like, "That's great. Doctor the script. You can be in the movie, but you got to die first. So you can't write yourself into being the last man standing." I think. So
when the black guy isn't the first guy to die in the film,
it's Shane Black. Gotta have a black in there. Gotta have.
That's right. Shane Black, changes some of the tropes and the token things that we used to have, right?
Exactly.
Well, it's still a black guy dying first.
It's still a black guy, but he was Hawkins in that. He was Hawkins.
I love Hawkins, man.
It's a great role, and
I can make it.
But they changed the script, and Stan Winston's guys. Arnold Schwarzenegger, I think, said, "Hey, why don't you let these guys try to come up with an alien look? Because this red chicken suit ain't cutting it."
So they left that part of the story out. They just said he didn't like the suit. I was assuming it was always the Predator suit, but it was not the Predator suit. It's fucking KFC running around. I had chicken guy.
It is. Apparently, it's a red rubber chicken alien suit.
Oh my God. Okay.
What's interesting is the story that I love, the tie-in, is if you look at the Predator and the latex kind of big one-piece bodysuit, and even the paint scheme and the way it looks, do a side-by-side comparison of Gilman for Monster Squad, and it's the same paint scheme because it's the same guy.
Wow,
that created it. That's Steve Wang. That's Steve Wang and Matt Rose, and it's all because of Monster Squad. Because there
you go, Gilman.
When they were doing the pre-production, Steve Wang was a young creature effects artist and had an idea of how he wanted to approach Creature from the Black Lagoon, which is Gilman and Monster Squad. And Stan Winston was like not paying attention or giving him the autonomy to do what he wanted to do. And so Steve had to enter into this contest, this kind of creature effects contest that apparently was being judged by Rick Baker and Tom Savini and Stan Winston, his boss. Wow. Yeah. And Steve made this little sea turtle kind of sea thing, that lives in the water, and did this paint scheme. And it was something that no one had ever done before. And Stan Winston apparently told Steve, he's like, so this is what you were talking about? You want to do he's like, okay, this looks good. Let's do it that way. And then all that came in and translates. If you look at Gilman and Predator, it's all the same stuff.
That's really cool. I'll be looking at that tonight. Yes.
No intellectual property is safe from reboot treatment these days. If the Monster Squad sees a resurrection in the form of a remake, I'm not sure how well versed you are at the kids today that are in the scene, but is there somebody that you think would be able to play the role as Sean? And would you be interested in stepping in as Sean's dad? The shoe's originally filled by Stephen Mock.
So we're talking remake, reboot, not sequel.
Yeah. If they were just
two things. I'll do a little backstory. They were remaking this movie for a number of years.
Oh wow.
Rob Cohen, who is Rob Cohen, the director and kind of producer Rob Cohen, who's a big name now, was a young producer on a movie called The Monster Squad. When Monster Squad had its resurgence in 07 or 06 and 07, and the DVD came out and kind of made a splash. That's where Monster Squad made its money on the 20th anniversary DVD that no one else saw except for Lionsgate, but who wasn't even the original studio. But Rob Cohen said, "Oh, people like this movie. There's a thing. I'm going to remake it," and teamed up with Michael Bay's company to remake Monster Squad. And much to the chagrin of a lot of the fans, and so the torches and the pitchforks came out. And they worked on it for a number of years and couldn't get the script right, because you can't remake this movie in the same fashion. You can't have the kids do and say the same things. And they just couldn't really get it, apparently. And then Universal Studios announced that they were doing a thing called the Dark Universe.
Yep.
And they were bringing around all of their famous Universal monsters. And then they're going to do the Avengers thing. They're going to do one-offs, and then they're going to do the Avengers thing. And Rob Cohen and Platinum Dunes apparently said, well, if Universal's doing that, there's no reason to remake the Monster Squad. And everybody rejoiced. And so that project died. And then the Dark Universe died.
Tom Cruise.
Because a lot of people don't know that Dracula Untold was the first installment of the Dark Universe for Universal, and no one saw that movie. And Universal panicked and went, oh shit, is Tom Cruise available for the Mummy? We got to put Tom Cruise in a movie. We got to save this thing. And it didn't.
That's your answer. You asked me for the one bad Tom Cruise movie. That's it. That's it. Yeah, the one. He's done a million. You get one. Get some mulligan. Now, let me ask you this. Now, you've made lifelong friends on the set on Monster Squad.
Wait, hold on.
Hold on. There was a second half to it. There's a second half.
Sorry. Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, don't skip yours. I want to go back to it. But you said, would I be interested in it? I don't know. A reboot, a remake is different. And the interesting thing is why there hasn't been a lot or anything actually in the monster. It's always been a rights issue, and so that's still in process of where those rights are, and that's all. That's a whole other conversation that I'm not at liberty to discuss because it's not my thing. What we talk about reboots and remakes, we've seen it a lot. We've already seen Monster Squad that have been remade.
Yeah.
So we don't need to do it. We don't need to do it. Yeah. And there's been funny conversations with Fred and Shane at Netflix and at Fox and at New Line and all these places about doing it. And it cracks me up. And Fred and Shane don't want to remake it.
Oh, what's the point? I mean,
it's been remade. Like it's
so
Stranger
well
Things,
anyway.
it's all this other stuff. A sequel is a totally different story, and I think if they were involved in it and it was a cool story and done well, and I think we'd all be very interested in it.
Oh man, it could be like the Cobra Kai treatment. Like, you know, you guys are all grown up now, you're adults. It could be a Netflix series that follows your kids that are carrying the oh man, it'd be so much fun.
There's a lot of Monster Squad universe that you could dive into, and look, just between you, me, and all your millions of listeners.
Thank you.
There's a really cool sequel story on someone's laptop, and it's kind of a kick-ass story. It's awesome. Mine, but it's I developed it years ago, and I keep adding to it, as they sprinkle in some updates. And don't
tell him that. He'll be contacting you like, hey man, if you just want to send it to me for a read through, I'll do it.
Yeah. It's I keep that thing very close. Like only a handful of people know the story, but I actually dig it. I think it works. I could be a little biased.
I will gain your trust. One thing, I will read that script.
there's so much to do in that world, and I do think if there was a sequel, it would be a current day. We're obviously older. There's got to be kids involved. It's a passing of the torch type thing. We're involved, but it's about a new gang of kids or a new squad of kids. But one thing that I actually came up with in my mind and kind of batted around a little bit, I was like, one of the things that interests me about Monster Squad, the story that we see, is Dracula gets away. It's something that's missed in the beginning of Monster Squad because I don't know why they didn't keep the scene in the movie. They actually capture Dracula at the beginning of Monster Squad and they stake him and they put him in a wagon. And then they go up to the castle to do the amulet thing and suck all the bad shit into the vortex. But what they do is they leave the body of Dracula down in the wagon with like a red shirt to guard it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you know good stories or good scripts, and Fred Decker stories and Shane Black scripts, there's always setups and payoffs, and it's always their stories are big setups, whether scene by scene, act by act, and beginning of the movie to the end. It's all setups and payoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Monster Squad, the movie that you see, is a series of setups that you never get the payoff, and it's a series of payoffs that you don't know are payoffs because you never got the setup.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a much deeper, full script, in the beginning of the production, and it just kept getting whittled away. And one of them was that, and they actually shot this footage, of Dracula getting staked, and then they go to the castle, and this henchman is sitting by the campfire guarding the body of the dead vampire that they came to kill. And out of the mist in the woods come 3 vampire brides, and he's got to stand up, and he shoots one of them with his crossbow. And then the other one grabs him and he grabs a stake and kills her. And then the other one's choking him and about to get him, and she's about to bite him, and he's flailing around, to save his own life. And his hand comes, he grabs a stake and he stakes her and kills her. And he's like, I made it. All right, I'm the man. And of course, in vampire lore, the stake that he grabbed was the one that was in the chest of Dracula. And when you unstake a vampire, they come back to life. And so this guy's sitting there being all happy with himself that he just survived these 3 vampire brides attack. And Duncan Regeer sits up in the wagon and stares at him, and that's doom for this guy. Nice. But what that means is Dracula gets away. And that's where it says they blew it, we never get that as an audience. Like, well, we don't know how they blew it. And no one ever explains this.
Yeah.
It's because they cut the scene. And I always thought it was really bad edit.
You're going to rewatch tonight, aren't you?
Oh yeah. but what I want to know is, okay, so Dracula sits up and leaves, and he doesn't get sucked into it. So he's been walking around for 100 years, waiting for this day, and then a group of kids led by me get in his way.
Yeah,
I want. That's why, in my mind, that's why that's why that Dracula in our movie is so pissed, because he can't do anything for 100 years, so he has to just walk around and suffer fools for 100 years. And then a group of kids get in his way and foil his plans, which is a great story.
Yeah.
But I want to know what Dracula was doing for 100 years. That's a television show.
Oh yeah.
What was our Dracula after he gets away? I think every season is like a decade.
Cutthroat lawyer.
Yeah. See, you could also give it the treatment that he's involved in every, some way, shape or form bad thing that's happened. Like
he's like anti-Forrest Gumping through history.
Right. And, he's part of, he's part of, world wars and economic crashes and assassinate all this bad stuff. And I think it's a really cool story, because I used to always joke, like, because everybody would say, like, where does Dracula get dynamite? I was like, what do you mean? He's Dracula. He can get it anywhere. He's been around for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
I was like, I think he went down to like the Panama Canal when they were building and stole a box of dynamite. Okay.
Yeah.
So you could get dynamite from anywhere, and so I actually like that storyline in some Monster Squad IP. Like, what was our Dracula doing for 100 years until he shows up in Anytown, USA, and has to, go against Sean and Rudy and Horace and Patrick and Phoebe.
The prequel. The prequel to the drag.
Yeah.
Now, you made lifelong friends, of course, on the set of the Monster Squad. Notably, Ryan Lambert with you guys, still working on projects together, including a Monster Squad podcast called The Squadcast. But a lot of the cast, of course, still get together for conventions and reunions. What is it like to have an extended family that you were adopted into 35 years ago? And what, out of all those characters, whose personality is most similar to the character they played?
So the first part of that, it's amazing. I mean, when the kind of the resurgence came around after that first Alamo Drafthouse screening in 2006, which really kind of launched the whole, kind of rocket that's been going on for the last 15 years or so or more. We thought that kind of attention would last a year. Mm-hmm. Like, we're like, oh, we're doing a screening of Monsters Ball. Like, no one's seen this movie. This movie's dead. And then it just blew up, thankfully, to the internet and to the chat rooms and the fan blogs. And a year later, a DVD comes out. Now we're at San Diego Comic-Con releasing that DVD. There's 1,000 people in line trying to get their DVD signed. I mean, it's bonkers. But we thought this was going to last about a year, maybe two, maybe go into another summer and do this convention thing, or have a screening somewhere, somebody, some theater, some art house, some festival, for about 12 or 14 years, played Monster Squad every weekend somewhere for over a decade.
Thank you.
And that was insane. And we thought it was going to fizzle out, and it hasn't fizzled out. It's still going. And now it's been a couple of years, of course, but that's what led to me sitting around realizing that this movie made an impact on some people in some way, shape, or form. And it's not superficial.
Mm-hmm. It's real. This thing's real.
And there's something very interesting there. And that's what I wanted to sort of investigate and interrogate. And that's what the original kind of thought that the documentary should be. And then I lucked out more than I could ever dream when I, started throwing that project around and hooked up with Henry McComas at Pilgrim Media Group. And, they became a studio partner with my company to make the documentary. And, I thought it was a nice thing to add to the Monster Squad kind of parade.
Yeah.
And, but to be a part of that and bring all those people in, Stephen Mock says a very nice thing. And he says it very publicly a lot, that none of this would happen without me. I don't know if that's necessarily accurate. I think I've sort of been maybe the upfront, sort of like the gatekeeper to Monster Squad and the fans over the last, especially at the very beginning, because I thought it was fun. I thought it was interesting. I thought it was, something that not everybody gets a chance to do, and we should take advantage of it, while it lasts for a year or summer. And we all thought it would die. And then it started growing and growing and growing. And why would you stop talking about it? I think it's a fascinating dynamic. I think it's a fascinating paradigm that something like this became a paradigm shift for a lot of people, a lot of kids, a lot of fans. It became a paradigm shift for actors and creature effects guys and producers and writers and directors, whether it's negative or positive. And that's really what the documentary became. But it was really about understanding and realizing that the only reason that we are sitting here talking about this 25 years later, 30 years later, now 35 years later, are the fans of this movie that never let it die. it stuck with them. It connected with them. They brought it around the schoolyard. They ripped it off, HBO on their VHS tape and passed it around the neighborhood. They went to the video store and rented it every freaking Friday. And sometimes stole the tape, then your mom's credit card gets hit for the $105 licensing fee, or the manager of the store just gives it to you because you rent it every weekend. Is it just
first one was free, kid?
Yeah.
And now we're coming of age where we're having kids that are getting to the age where we're ready to show it to them too. So I feel like it's just going to keep on living on.
Keep on going.
Yeah. And look, now that was the next thing that's, the thing is fascinating. There's a whole second generation, and even a newer second, a younger second generation. There's some second generation Monster Squad fans that we've met when, these girls or boys were 5, 6, 7 years old. Now they're 15, 17, 20.
Mm-hmm.
And, but now there's still some new 5 and 6 year old second generations that are absolute, like they're just into it.
Yeah.
I'm like this is, when does this stop? I was like, I don't want it to, like, I'm not saying please stop. I'm saying this is fascinating.
Yeah.
And it's just always a really unique conversation to have. And why wouldn't you want to be a part of that?
Yeah. And speaking of the devoted fan base, first of all, it's so cool how you pay so much service to them through all the conventions and the special screenings that you do, and just how you embrace all of it. Is there a fan interaction throughout all of these things that stands out to you? Because I imagine there's just crazy cosplaying, tattoos, other stuff that people do to display their affection for your work. Is there something that stands out to you? Like, oh my God, this guy's got me on his calf, or something like that?
There's a lot of that. It's not just one. There's actually a lot. It never gets old. You don't ever get used to it. I've seen some really good ink, and I've seen some mediocre ink.
Mm-hmm.
But that first time someone comes up and says, I remember this well, I think it was in Pittsburgh. Hey man, will you sign my DVD or whatever? I said, yeah. And also, will you sign my leg? Because I'm going to go down the street. My guy's waiting for me and I'm going to tattoo it. And I was like, you're going to tattoo what? He's like, I'm going to tattoo your autograph on my leg. Right below, because he had, like, I think this first guy had a bunch of the monsters on his calf or something. He's like, I want you to sign my ankle and I'm going to go ink that. Nice. And I went, why? It's just me. It's like, no, don't permanent me on you. I don't know if that's going to get a return for you or not. And I was like, you're not going to do that. We said, all right, if you're doing that, come back and I want to see it oozing. And 45 minutes later, that dude came back with an oozing bloody tattoo. And I was like, okay, this is a thing. And that, it's, different scenes in the movie, different, a lot of people like the monsters, so there's a lot of monsters on people's skin. There's, Ryan, me, Ashley, like our faces are on people's like torsos and backs. And just like, that's a little weird.
Yeah. Does it ever get not unsettling? I mean, I guess unsettling is the wrong word, but just, weird. It's just, you could have never, like, nothing prepares you as a human being to be that status of where somebody else is putting your image on their body permanently.
Yeah, that really means something, and it's, we've met, a handful of cool people that, we still see regularly, or they're in contact with you, on social media. There is one guy that we're pals now too, but he was a friend of a friend in the comic world. And I met him at a screening, and we were hanging out for like 2 hours. Then he finally admitted he has a Monster Squad tattoo. I was like, oh, okay. But you didn't say anything about that. He's like, let me see. I was like, let me see it. He's like, no. I'm like, what do you mean no? And he's like, nah, it's not finished. It's not good. Like, it's not. I was like, no, okay, never mind. I was like, show me. Come on. Yeah, it was not good.
It's not finished. When is it going bad? The movie's been out for, it's not finished.
Yeah, it's not finished. But I didn't know he was that big of a fan. I thought he was just a friend of a friend that wanted to come to this event and hang out. And he's like, no. And it was giant. And it's like the whole side of his torso. And I was like, you got to get that finished.
I want to make this weird. I know we've been hanging out all day. Like, I'm like a huge fan. Like, that's getting weird, like security. And trust me, we got something in common. I know what it's like to get somebody's autograph tattooed on someone. So me and you got something in common there. Different story another day.
Oh yeah, no, I want to hear that when we hang out. And it's also fun because Monster Squad, you don't realize, has that breadth of connection with people. And you find out that some really cool people are huge Monster Squad fans. It's not just a kid in Kansas City or a gal in Orlando. There's like some really cool actors and some comics and directors and other people that are huge, and they're all influenced by Monster Squad, which is also cool. Yeah. And that's what we wanted to talk about in the documentary. So there's a lot of directors that are huge names now that one of their favorite films is Monster Squad. But one of my favorite kind of go backs talking about like not telling you up front is I used to hang out with a guy years ago because I was friends with his manager. And my best friend, we'd all go hang out as dudes going out and having a drink or so in LA. And this was this tall, like kind of like really good looking dude from from Pittsburgh, where he's from, Pittsburgh or whatever. And when we hung out for like a year, and he was always this crazy guy, and we'd go out and I would drive him home because we kind of lived on the same side of town, and never knew. And then like a year later, this guy breaks and becomes very, very famous. And I see him, years and years after that. I mean, I'm talking years after that, like at a Monster Squad. I was like, hey, what's going on, man? It's like, haven't seen you in a really long time. He's like, holy cow, what's going on? I'm like, good, what you been? And like, he's a very well-known dude at this point. And I'm like, hey, man, it's good to see you. He's like, what do you mean why I'm here? I'm a huge Monster Squad fan. I was like, you are? He's like, dude, I'm the biggest Monster Squad fan there is. I was like, how come you didn't say that 10 years ago when we were hanging out and I was trying? He's like, man, I wasn't going to say anything back then. And I was like, why? I mean, I feel like we're missing out on a lot of stuff that we could have, been doing or hung out or talked about. And it's Joe Manganiello. And
Wow.
So Joe's like one of the coolest dudes out there. And I hung out with him way before he was Joe Manganiello. And now he's like super awesome Joe Manganiello and married to Sofia Vergara and, doing all these huge roles. And I'm like, wait, what? And he's like, oh yeah, and,
I mean, I'm a fan.
Magic Mike.
I know
a lot of yeah, and I could have been in Magic Mike. He was like, come on, Joe, just get me in the gym for a little bit. It's all right.
I could totally see that because so he does like dungeon. He runs like his own Dungeons and Dragons thing and everything. That checks out.
Yeah, he's a really super cool dude. I see him every once in a while, so it's good to connect. And apparently, like a bunch of SNL characters are big Monster Squad fans. And I actually sent a signed DVD to Bill Hader one time. Never got a response.
That's awesome. Man, that's
hopefully he got it. I don't know if he ever actually received it.
But going back to Wolfman's Got Nards, the documentary that you produced and wrote and put spearheaded. Let's just say that. You already kind of talked about where your inspiration came from for getting that film made. What would you say was the most challenging part of bringing it together, and what was the most fulfilling aspect of like revisiting all of that?
I think kind of maybe the most challenging aspect was trying to actually attain, kind of all the things I wanted to do. And my original concept of a documentary was not what we ended up having, and I'm super fortunate for that because it was a totally kind of like guerrilla, shitty low budge thing that I was just going to run around with a camera and talk to some people about, and then put it on Ryan and I's website for like $1. Mm-hmm. Because we were going into the 30th anniversary year, and it was just by absolute serendipity, end up running into these guys at Pilgrim Media Group while I'm taking my friend Jen off to lunch, who works at the studio. And these guys walk out the door at the same time. And they said, hey, what are you working on? I said, oh, I'm looking at this. And they're like, oh my God, you want to make a Monster Squad documentary? Well, we're all huge Monster Squad fans. I think this is something that we might be able to do here. Let's have a meeting about that. And it was all like on the sidewalk. I was like, okay, who are you? And what it ended up being is now these three guys are three of my best friends, and Henry McComas and I work on other projects. And so I think when we first kind of got it, I don't know what the hardest thing was, because we did a lot of work, and I made that crew do a lot of work. I made Ryan and Ashley do a lot of work. I did a lot of work, but I feel like I was just coming up with the ideas, setting the things in motion, and these guys just really knocked it out of the park. So I don't know what was hard about it. I think they did all the heavy lifting. They will tell you that I did a lot of heavy work too, but I give all the credit to them because they put an entire year of their lives into this project. And you can ask them, and I love when they say, and not 1 minute of it seemed like work. And I took those guys all over the place. I mean, we went to London twice. We went around the country. We went on that 17 city, Alamo Draft House tour in 17 days. So if you're going to ask what was probably the most difficult, it was probably that 17 days. Because Alamo had called me and said, "Hey, 30th anniversary is coming up. We kind of want to do like a tour. You guys want to do are you interested in going on the road and doing a tour?" And I was like, "I'd love to. By the way, do you want anybody else to go? Because I'll call Ryan and Ashley. It's always a big draw." They're like, "Oh crap, yeah, that'd be great. See if they want to do it." I called them up. They said, "That sounds fun. What do you think it'll be?" I said, "I don't know. Few cities, like we'll fly around, like do 2 this weekend, do a couple of others next weekend, all in October, I think. So it'd be kind of fun. And, we get paid a little bit to do it." And they're like, "Yeah, we're in." I was like, "Great." A couple months later, Alamo calls me back and they're like, "Hey, we're in. We've got it set. It's 17 cities and it's in 17 days. And I'm like, "Wait, what?" So I had to call everybody and go, "Hey guys, guess what we're doing?"
It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. And it was literally a different city every night.
That's
and
wild.
what's crazy, not only did we have to show up as the actors and do an intro, they show the movie, and then we do a Q&A for 30 or 45 minutes or an hour after, and then you go out in the lobby and sign everything for everybody that wants to stick around. We did that. It was only 17 cities, but over half of those locations did 2 shows in each night. So we had to double up in half of those cities and do 2 screenings and 2 Q&As and 2 autograph sessions, all while I was also dragging a production crew around and documenting all of this.
Wow.
Which couldn't have been better. I mean, that's documentary gold, and a lot of our best stuff came from that 17 days. But also we had Ashley Banks' baby. So we had a 16-month-old infant that we had to take on the road for 17 days and pack up and take on the plane. And we just did it like family style, and everybody did their role and got us on the airplane or on the train or in the rental car and went all over the country. We started in San Francisco and we ended in Virginia.
Wow. That's awesome. I can totally appreciate the overwhelming, like how it could feel so overwhelming to go into a project like that. It means so much to you. You know how much it means to the fans, and there's so much that you want to cover and want to convey. To fit it all into one documentary must have felt just kind of overwhelming at times.
It did. And you can only you can try to do too much. And, I realized that I had great people working with me on this. And there was things that, you would want that, it's just didn't happen. There's people that you wanted to get that were just unavailable or not interested. And that's okay. But, it's the stuff that you find that you discover out of the blue, like on the road, and and honestly, some of the stuff that ended up happening that wasn't planned. It's like, there's 2 moments that are actually in the documentary, and they're big bits that we weren't planned to do that. We didn't know that was going to happen. Those 2 things very well may have actually supplanted and replaced some big face name as an interview or something, because it's just better part of the story. Yeah. And you realize when you're making something like a documentary, it's a living, breathing, organic thing that grows and changes and evolves as you make it. And even after you stop shooting, it changes as you're cutting it. And that's, Henry, very few people touched that movie. And not one of them wasn't a fan or had some connection and or really liked this project. And that's why the quality and the heart that they came out. I think the documentary turned out pretty good, and I'm not even taking the credit for most of that.
Where can people find that now?
It's still, if you're in the US or Canada, it's still available for VOD, whether iTunes, Google Play, it's on Amazon Prime. If you want an actual physical copy of it, you can order it from Amazon.
Awesome.
I think it's still on Plex and Tubi as we speak. If it hasn't changed, things cycle out, all the time. It's being released internationally as we speak in a number of markets like the UK and Australia and Germany and Spain. We had a little kind of hiccup. I don't want to say hiccup, but a little delay actually getting this movie out. So it's taken a little bit to actually get the international release, but that happens with movies. And so instead of seeing it in the 30th anniversary year, fans are seeing it in the 35th, anniversary year, or the 36th when it came out, but or 31st. And so it's neat, but I cannot emphasize enough how great everybody that touched that film was. And it turned out, way beyond the quality and the scope and the depth that I could have possibly dreamed of having. And I'm really, really proud of that project.
Thanks, Dre.
Nobody's going to forget about you now.
I see what he did there.
So what would you give Monster Squad?
Well, first off, what I would give it is, you have to, again, this is a film that takes you back through the 80s. This is a nostalgia piece. It holds up very well. And I was just thinking about just sitting there watching. It's a fun ride.
Yeah.
It doesn't keep you too long. It has its moments. It doesn't take itself too serious, but it never goes overboard with it, like become never too just janky all over. So
I think that's Shane Black, man.
Yeah, no, definitely shout out to Shane Black. You can see, like I say, the consistency throughout the films that he's done, and I'm a fan of his. So, again, I like it. It's a good story piece. If I had to give it 1 through a frightening 5, for what it was in this genre, holding up. .8.
Damn, that's specific.
Yeah.
Is there a particular reason why? Why the 1.2 points get?
Because again, to me, it's just because there are other films of that era which score much higher, and it's a film in the 80s. And don't get me wrong, 3.8 around the time where there was a bunch of great movies were being made. So
between this and the Goonies,
I think you already know the Goonies are 5.
I see Monster Squad more than I've seen the Goonies.
I can believe that, but you haven't seen a lot of things. We're sorry.
Because I always felt like Monster Squad. I give Monster Squad a 4. There's a few moments where it's like you can only make something so good when children are like leading the film, and they did. Like it's a 5 if it were adults. But like they what they did with kids in this was like the best I've ever seen. Like the most natural. The kids' chemistry was great, but there were just like a few moments that took me out of the suspension of disbelief with the kids. It's
Such as? He was just going to say, "There's no particular moment I can think."
But like little, it's hard for me to come up with a specific example. I don't know. There, like the end where, as cool as the line is, where Andre Gower is like, "We're the Monster Squad."
Yeah, that was janky.
Yeah, it's just like, that's I forgive you for slipping into the cheese right there because it's kind of inescapable in a movie like this. You kind of have to put those fan services in there, the one-liners.
We're the Monster Squad.
Monster Squad for me was, I think it was. I loved horror movies, like The Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Child's Play, Halloween, like Pumpkinhead, Tales from the Crypt. That's Friday the 13th.
I know. I just want to show our shirts again. We didn't take a chance to show it.
Yeah. So I mean, I from like age 6, 7, I was the kids in the Monster Squad. Like I lived and breathed those movies. So between Monster Squad and the Goonies, Monster Squad just resonated with me more because I was those kids, and because I have this weird thing with Sean Astin where he just kind of annoys the shit out of me. And Andre Gower is such a, like, if you would have gave Andre Gower Sean Astin's role in the Goonies would have been infinitely better.
I'd like to see that. I'm not saying you're wrong but I want to go. No, I want to see Sean Astin's performance in the Monster Squad now and see if you say you've seen it so many times.
It would be infinitely worse. Yeah, no, that would be terrible. But I think what also sets Monster Squad apart for me from the Goonies and other movies like it is, again, Shane Black's writing, his witty dialogue. And you don't get that in kids' movies anymore. Like when there's like everything is in service to the plot in movies now. Like there's no like one-off character developments or I don't know, just like when they're at the beginning when they're all walking down the sidewalk and they're just kind of bantering, and it doesn't really have much to do with forwarding the plot along.
Nope.
But it's making you you're feeling
engaged.
Nah, I don't want to say engaged to these kids. I almost said that, but I don't want
But
to
you
say
did
that.
just say that.
Ew. You're invested in them. You're like,
That's even worse, man.
You're yeah, but I mean, I'm
You're
going
digging
with
a
that.
hole. You're digging-
You're invested in the children.
Digging deep.
So yeah, I love Monster Squad, and I think it holds up well. The practical effects are awesome in it. The writing is timeless.
That Wolfman transformation is every man. Listen, for it to be the 80s, that's done very. You almost thought you was watching American Werewolf in London.
It was very close to that, yeah. Like you could tell they used some of the same effects where they have like
skin.
the pressure, the air pressure underneath the prosthetic that blows out.
Yep.
Yeah, they used it sparingly. Like a lot. That's the other thing with family films with effects. They just phone those in because they're like, it doesn't really care. It's a family movie. They're not expecting
they
much.
didn't do that.
They cut away. They only showed you just so they left things up to the imagination. Speaking of Rudy though, Ruby, that scene where he comes walking out with the 3 zombie bitches in the street and he's pulling out his arrow and they're like, where you going, Rudy?
I'm in the goddamn club, aren't I?
Rudy's so damn cool.
Rudy is cool.
Cool.
So cool. And slide plot, he's slowly working. First off, you asked me what I thought about. It's not an 80s film if we don't see the hot girl across the street in the window. And then he immediately starts, she's your sister? He starts plotting on him like, I'm pretty sure he's going to want to hang out soon.
Yeah.
And I thought that was cool too, how they, and I don't feel like this would ever really would happen in real life, but the writers and the director were probably like, you know what, man, we just wish one of the cool guys in school would have been cool with us so he could have got all the other bullies and stuff away from us. So they made Rudy that. You know what I'm saying? Like that didn't exist back then. The cool guys were not really looking out for the little guys. They just stayed to themselves. But now it's like
really no reason for that.
You met my guy Horace. Well, why do you two know each other? That's between us.
Yeah.
That relationship was never explained. They didn't even hang out like extra in the movie. There's no scenes with Horace and Rudy.
No.
Hey, I said, but they opened up so strong. Hey, I see you met my friend Horace.
Yeah.
He does my homework.
That was good.
A little weird.
It was good. I enjoyed it. Let us know in the comments what you think about Monster Squad. When was the first time you saw Monster Squad? Did you grow up with it?
Which one? The Monster Squad from Space Jam or the movie?
Were they the Monster Squad?
Toon Squad.
Toon
Squad versus Monster Squad. Yep.
The Monsters. The Monstars.
Very good job. Yes. So guys, let us know in the
Squad.
comments, what do you think? Or you think they missed anybody? Do you think it was, again, beautiful how they did it by using these characters, timeless characters, but without just a little twist, changing it up. And hey, be sure to check out more of our content. It's over, like 1,000 videos now, man?
Getting there.
No, being there. Chance.
We're the Monster Squad.